I have no idea what's going on with this leaf. I don't know why it is red. That it looks like it's a cloth that's soaked up blood. That the growth point, for whatever reason, has just decided to cark it. Yeah, I don't know what the deal is here. G'day guys, welcome to this episode of Pete vs. Plants. I am Pete and today's victim is this silver cloud. And I don't know what the difference is between the Philodendron Mamei and the silver cloud. I don't know if one is a cultivar of the other, if they're the same thing, whatever. You guys let me know if you know the difference. But I bought one of these that was a Mamei and I believe it was this one. I remember the large leaf. And the other one I bought as a silver cloud from Bunnings. And you can see, guys, she, or they rather, have been having a shit time. They have been having a shit time. I don't know what the deal is. This thing was attacked by spider mites. I sprayed the hell out of it to get rid of them multiple times. It's been living in my shower. I mean, that's probably part of the problem. But before I started spraying it, this leaf was like taking months to unfurl and it still hasn't. I don't understand. I mean, I'm sort of lying. I haven't really treated it that well. I probably should have treated it better. I think what the issue has been is that I have been watering the pole and not the soil, and the thing probably hasn't quite latched on to the pole properly yet to sort of enjoy all of that water coming through the pole. So that's what I suspect. I'm not sure if there was some root rot issues, if the substrate down here has dried out. I was assuming that if I was watering this pole that it would kind of wick. I don't know if wick down is a thing, but wick down out of the pole into the soil. But yeah, she's just been having a shit time, guys. She's been having a shit time. And I think it's just time to chop and prop and start again. The leaves are coming out janky as, like, I don't know what the hell is going on here with this monstrosity over here. It's got like, look at this. There's like 2 growth points, these 2, and there's one down here out of this same... I don't know if it's like part of a separate vine. I don't know what is going on with that thing. There's just 3 growth points and barely any leaves. Then there's this other one that seems to be sort of climbing up, but its roots have died off, the aerial roots here. And again, the most recent leaf is just having a really shit time of it. So I think we're just going to chop and prop, guys. I might take some water propagations, see how they go. And I might also just take some stumps and chuck them into a prop box. So, first things first, sterilization. So hand sanitizer here, which is actually refilled with alcohol. I'm going to use a reused razor blade because I don't care as much. Sorry. The alcohol should do its job. It should be fine. I'm not giving you the new treatment though, right? Yeah, this, I just don't get it. I don't know if that's fungal, bacterial, underwatering, and it's just browned off. And yeah, again, it's like, it's a really interesting plant. I don't know what the deal is, but like here, this node under here has activated as well. Can you see that shooting up? So it's interesting. I've got a few of these philodendrons at the moment that just seem to be shooting out every single node. And I've just noticed here too, look at this. I'm not sure if you can see. There is an axillary bud right here that has just popped. So that one's activated further up too. So it's really interesting to me why they decide to do this. And then what I think I've also noticed here is that the growth point, this must be part of the problem. The growth point here at the top has browned off and rotten. So actually that is probably why these growth points further down this vine have activated and shot out. If you ever see that and you're unsure why, and especially if you've been getting crap growth at the tip here, perhaps check on what is going on here and you might find that, let's just break this off and have a look, that the growth point, for whatever reason, has just decided to cark it. So, yeah, I don't know what the deal is here. Again, it could be, maybe it's just underwatering. And it's interesting, so what's happened here is I've just taken off the leaf that was coming out, right? As you probably noticed. But further down, a new leaf has started coming up. So that's what often happens if you have a tip that rots Say when you're propagating things and you've got a nice little growth point that I've just ripped off the plant. But say this growth point, I think that's a growth point here. I don't know what this is. It's kind of flat. It's a bit weird. Say this is a growth point and that suddenly rots off. Quite often a new one will come from here and start growing up. But if that development up here is slow to progress, you may actually have activation of axillary buds further down the vine that'll end up taking over. So, and that's what we sort of see on this one where that growth point up the top here carked it. The lowest axillary bud here, or at least lower down, has activated and is more mature than the next one up that has popped but hasn't done as much. Anyway, bit of interesting sort of growth patterns, I guess, that I've noticed with these guys. But yeah, it's a bit of a bummer when that happens and you're just like, I don't understand why you decided to do that. And you can see I've just pulled it out there. That was the new leaf that would have pushed out and unfurled this tip, and it came out of inside the growth tip here that had already browned off and died. So anyway, my fingers are really sticky. I probably need to wash them. I think you can be allergic to this stuff, but whatever. Okay, so the reason that this one looks like it's had a crap time of it and all these different buds have activated is because the tip here seems to be missing. So I must have bought this one from Bunnings and that had already happened because I don't remember taking any cuttings from this guy. Anyway, all right, so I am just gonna hack, to be honest, because yeah, I'm not really too phased with this plant. I want a nice specimen. I want it to grow, I want it to go off like a frog in a sock. I want it to do well, but when you have these sorts of plants that just end up ugly as in your collection and you see them every day and it just hurts your soul a little bit more every single day, you just want to let out a little tear. It's kind of soul crushing, right? By definition, it's kind of, if it's crushing your soul, it's soul crushing. It's sort of depressing to see. So that's why I think I've decided that, I'm just sick of looking at this thing in my collection, having a really hard time of it, and would rather just start again. Okay, so here we go. Tip cutting. Yeah, get through there. We're using a razor blade so that we get a nice sharp cut and the edges aren't compressed. If you use secateurs or shears, as you may call them overseas, or even a knife or scissors, you can end up crushing either side of the stem and that just invites rot. So it's not always going to cause rot, right? The plant can callus over and it can be fine. But if you're working with a plant that you are sort of hoping has more of a chance of survival, if you've only got a few cuttings or it's an expensive plant, then definitely use something like a very sharp razor blade, a scalpel, a very sharp knife, and yeah, try and just get through it in one go so that you can end up with a very clean cut. It calluses over and has a better chance of avoiding infection. Yeah, this is so weird. This growth point here, it's like a flat. It's kind of like this sharp flat thing. It's kind of weird, and it's been sitting there for quite a while now, waiting. Like this leaf has just been unfurling, and I just don't get what is going on with this thing. It just doesn't look like it's gonna shoot out a leaf, right? It's very peculiar. Anyway, so I guess that's a tip cutting. I could probably take and turn it into two. I could chop through here because I can see that there is an axillary bud on this side, but I honestly don't need a million different silver clouds. So I'm just gonna leave this one, where am I gonna leave it? Over here out of the way, callus over. And I guess we will go further down. I could keep the roots intact, but I'm just not really that interested in having, again, a very ugly, propagated, chopped down silver cloud sitting in a large pot. So I may just chuck the root system out, to be honest. And yeah, I guess we'll see what happens with this one. I may propagate this in water. I may just chop it up and chuck it into a prop box as a wet stick. Let's see, I might even just be brutal and try and pull this plant up out of the pot a little bit. And then there is a root coming down, hold on. All right, so I'm just gonna try and chop it off at the base. Oh, Jesus Christ. Talk about a thick stem. Oh, there we go. All right. And it has suffered from root rot, as you can see there, at least this root up the top here. So what I'm gonna do is chop that off at the base as well to try and get any of this rot out of the stem. Otherwise you can be asking for problems. Let's see if I can get in here without chopping this leaf off, because I am sort of chopping around the base of the leaf. I am trying to cut the base of this root that was going into the stem here off. Not sure if you can see there, but that little brown dot, it's still a little bit of rot, but I feel like if I go in a little further, this leaf's just going to go pull, although it wouldn't be the end of the world. And you know what? Do we do that? Do we just do it? Just scraping a bit. There's sort of brown over the top of this axillary bud up here, which I'm scraping off just to see if it is alive underneath or if it is already rotted. Sometimes that happens. It seems to be green underneath, so it should be all good. And I think that might be the only one on this stem, to be honest. It looks like it should be on the opposite side. You should have an axillary bud on the opposite side of the leaf based on, there was a leaf here and the axillary bud is here. The leaf is here, but on the opposite side here, there is some kind of stem rot that's taken place. So I have a feeling that's taken out the axillary bud on this side. So this may only be one now. All right, I guess that'll be a second cutting. And I don't know, if I go down deeper, there is actually, it looks like the roots down deeper are intact. Like they're healthy, they're not rotten. So I may come back to that one and we might, oh, it looks like the axillary bud is lower down. So it may have been below that leaf and that might be the issue. It's on the next one down. So that one does have roots and the roots do look healthy. So I could potentially take this out and then if I can find a small pot, I may put it in there because I have a feeling if it's got a nice root system and I can keep it contained and it's not taking up loads of space, it'll do my head in less. All right, now what are we doing with this next one? So this is the Silver Cloud. What do I want to do with this monstrosity? All right. I guess I will, see this leaf's a goner, so I might just rip that off so that I don't worry too much about creating another cutting. Like that is cooked. I don't know what is going on with that thing. Look guys, variegation. I love when people sell stuff online and they'll say like, you know, they found a variegated plant at Bunnings and it's like got a leaf that looks like this and you're sort of like, really? Who are you trying to fool? Anyone that you're going to fool isn't worth fooling. It's like putting a Ferrari badge on a Hyundai Excel. All right, so thinking. I guess I'm going to chop this one off low down and then we can see what we've got above. It has rooted into the moss pole, which is cool. Oh, sweet. All right. So that's kind of actually promising. So it had rooted into the moss pole, but for some reason it had still been having a shit time of it. So, you know, go figure. So we could do some tricky stuff here, guys. We do have two nodes that have roots coming out. This side has this axillary bud, and it's interesting. There looks to be a node just below it too. So it's like node, node, node. These are very compact. Although here the leaf, the sheath of the leaf is like covering almost the entire stem all the way around. So I can't see the axillary bud. I imagine there's one there. I might take a cutting here where I've got this, again, janky as leaf and include those roots. And I could, you know what I could do with this? If I chuck this into the aeroponics system, it'll go off like a frog in a sock, especially if it already has root growth like this. So we could potentially do that. I guess what I'll do, and again, look at this, activated. This one, activated. So because that root, fuck me, because the tip had rotted off, all these nodes down below had activated, which is kind of cool. It's kind of a, maybe a cheeky way of kind of propagating ahead of time before you chop if you want it, right? If you want to activate nodes on a plant, just chop the top off it and you'll probably see bang, 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 all these nodes activate and then you can chop it up and you sort of hit the ground running, right? Especially if it's air-laid or if it's rooted into the moss pole, then once you've chopped it, if it already has roots, and it's got an activated bud, it is going to grow very, very rapidly. All right, so, oh, interesting, down here too, this root looks promising. So this may sort of come back to life a little bit. It doesn't look rotten and it looks furry, so that may do well as well. Just depends how dried out it got when it sort of deactivated. Okay, so I'm trying to push this razor blade through, but this is so tough. Without damaging that growth point there. So that looks promising. Looks good. I'm just going to chop off these rotten aerial roots here, because again, if we leave these on here and we chuck it in water or something, they are just going to rot, right? So I have chopped those off. I will leave this little guy here. If you do chuck this in water, just keep an eye on it, see what happens. It probably will rot, but you just have to see how you go. And this leaf is probably going to be on the way out. So you kind of, yeah, I guess you sort of, if you're holding on to it whilst propagating, really what you're doing is just making your cutting have the best chance possible of photosynthesizing whilst all that chlorophyll and the leaf is rotting off, so that it can feed the root development and the bud development. You could probably just chop this off and chuck it in a prop box and should be sweet, right? So up to you really. All right, next one up. I was about to say down. Next one up, and I have to be sort of careful not to squish these roots and not to chop the growth point. There we go. Okay, so growth point is coming out here. Roots on the other side seem to all have rotten, so I am going to cut these off. They probably will activate more growth out of these little points, so you know, it doesn't matter too much. But yeah, another cutting. This leaf doesn't look as bad in terms of health. I mean, it looks like shit, but who are we kidding, guys? It looks like crap. But it'll probably hold on for quite a while. And so, yeah, hopefully it feeds this growth point in here and the root development. Boom, another one. All right, and so we have this one. My expectation here is that if we turn this into 2 cuttings, so if I cut here, that eventually a new growth point will come out of here. That would be my assumption. Although this point could rot, like if this section of stem just rots off, it'll be a blank. So yeah, you kind of have to just decide, what do you want to do? Do you want to just leave this as a single cutting? We could do that. You know what? It's probably a better idea. And it'll probably, yeah, it's going to go off, guys. Like, look at this root system here. You know, it's got about, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, almost 8 roots that have activated and are shooting out. So you could chuck this in water. You could chuck this in the aeroponic system, and in the aeroponic system, this would go nuts. You'd probably 2 weeks and you'd have roots that would be like this long, I reckon. We should do that. We should just test it. Is Pete's hypothesis correct? Yeah, fuck it, let's do it. All right, I'll chuck this in the aeroponic system, this one in. I'll try and find space for it, and we'll see how it goes, because that'll be pretty cool to see if I'm correct, right? If in 2 weeks this thing has gone off, everyone owes me $10. Kidding, guys, kidding. $20. All right, so I'm going to leave that one there. Now, I don't know what to do with this monstrosity. It's very weird. It's kind of like there's a sheath that's come off this side, and then there's like this tiny little rudimentary leaf that's come off this side, and then there's another, this looks like a growth point. See this one here, the dark one next to the tip of my finger here, that looks like it grew and then died, and then lower down has activated and is sending out some growth finally. So what I could do with this is potentially not chop it up and just leave it alone. And if it's got a nice root system, again, I could just pot it up in something smaller and it should just bush out. So maybe we do that. I'm just going to also look on the other side of this guy down here and see if I can see any growth point behind the sheath up the top that has popped or not. Popped or not. So difficult to get in there. It's got some good roots down the bottom here. I really can't make my mind up, can I, guys, with whether or not I'm going to pop this up. You know what? All right, so I'm going to take these guys out and we will have a squiz at what's going on under the skirt. And I wonder if they've grown into the moss pole. So if I pull this, are they going to come out and stick to it? Wow, okay. They actually do have pretty good roots, so that's one of those confusing things. You kind of like, this plant's giving me all these signals of root rot, and yet when you, I'm trying to get this root out, when you pull it out, like, that looks pretty good to me. I don't know why it's having such a shit time of it, but that's why we do this, I guess, right? We try and explore and find out what is going on. Okay, well, seems like such a waste. Okay, so I can see here, it does look like this thing has suffered from a significant amount of root rot on this side of the plant, like especially all of here. So it looks like it's probably had that happen and it's just been recovering from that the entire time. And that's potentially why it hasn't done anything substantial. So I'm just gonna, I was about to say chop, but pull off all the rot that I can see here. And it may just be easier to chop. Yeah, it's really interesting. So this was obviously, come off the root. This was obviously the cutting originally, this chunk here, and it would have had this root, this really nice root system. For whatever reason, this has ended up all just rotting. But then in the meantime, out of the new growth that's come up, we have these long, nice long roots that have developed. And so the plant has obviously just been putting a lot of effort into putting together a decent root system to then feed the large foliage that it had. And this was the Mamei with that huge initial leaf. It's under all the other cuttings. So I think what I'm going to do here is just separate and chop off all of this rot from the bottom and then start again, I guess. We can chuck it in a pot and see what happens. But I would imagine it's probably going to do pretty well. So it'll be a bit of a waste to throw this out. But I was kind of expecting it all to be cooked, really. All right, so I'm just going to hopefully chop away with the razor blade. Accidentally chop off some healthy roots. What else have we got here? Maybe I'll just use my hands. That's easier said than done. Remove this rot. There do seem to be some large roots that are healthy within this mass of rotten roots. So this is the sort of difficult part of pulling out all the gross rotten, see how I've what would you say, degloved, when someone can have their hand caught in a machine and it just rips the skin off. I know that's pretty graphic, but the verb for that is deglove. And it feels like you do that with roots that rot when you pull off all of the outer material, but then you're left with these strands. So yeah, there's a bunch of this that's happened. But it's interesting because I love sort of dissecting this stuff, going into root systems and seeing what's happened. Because quite often you'll have root rot growing out of healthy roots. And you'll have a massive root that's rotted, and then further up where the rot hasn't reached, the plant's just gone, screw you, and pushed out some more growth. So, I'm just going to try and remove all the rot that I can see. Again, I'm not really too phased, so I'm going a little quickly. I think that's probably all cooked. Yep. It's just a little tough at the base here, so I think I'm going to chop that one. Hopefully gently. All right, see, and it's interesting, so here's a good example. The tip of this long root has rotted, right, up to this point, and then it has shot out these healthy roots, and you can see the white tips at the ends of these guys. So, yeah, plants don't always, just get a little bit of root rot and then it's over, They often do survive. Here's another good example, if I can get this close to you. So this dark tip has rotted off, and then back to the point where it's rotted, that white tip of root has come out. And so the rot has obviously stopped and the plant has gone, let's just keep going. Waste not, want not. Okay. So I got a good feeling about this. I reckon this guy will survive. He'll be fine. We could chuck it in pond. We could chuck it in leca, seeing as we've just effectively cleaned the root system. I might give this a quick rinse and then we'll come back. And I do need to chop off these two other dead roots here that we degloved. Out you go. Okay, so I'm going to call that good enough. if it was a really important plant, I would probably go a little harder in terms of trying to clean it up, but I'm not as phased. So yeah, I'll leave this one on the side for now, but it looks like this should be okay. All right, so I'm just going to chuck that on top of a box. Jesus, soil on the ground. All right, and I guess we're having a look at this beast. Oh, okay, there's 2 plants in here. So that pot that I got from Bunnings must have had two of these guys inside. Love when that happens. So I'm just pulling off the sheaths, getting a better look at the stem. So yeah, you can see this is where it's been topped, right? The tip has been cut off, and then look at all of this axillary bud activation. All right, so it looks like a similar kind of situation where we do have a little bit of rot in here, but by and large, they look like pretty nice, healthy white roots. So because I'm lazy as, I think I might just put this one back in the soil. And you know, you kind of end up spreading your eggs over multiple baskets. Is that the expression? To have eggs in many baskets? Have your eggs in many baskets. Have your eggs in a single basket? You know what I mean, guys. So I think what I'll do is even just pot it up with the same soil. Like, I know there's a decent amount of rot in here, but the plant was living in here, so I'm going to assume that it was going to do okay. In spite of the rot that was in here, what I am trying to do though is get rid of any of the dead roots that I see in the soil. I've been using massive chunks of pumice, by the way, guys, and it hasn't been a problem. I just got this from Bunnings. These are, I think they're like decorative stones that you'd use on your driveway or in the front yard, and they're so cheap. So I think, yeah, don't be afraid to just lash out on chunky pumice like this. Yeah, I've got it in a lot of my mix to really just make it ultra chunky, and the water just goes straight through. All right, so that said, this might be too chunky if I put this plant in it. And I'm sorry for being sort of scattered, guys. I'm sort of decision making on the fly. The reason I say that is because I know that if there's no moss pole in here, I'm gonna have to water this thing every other day because it's just gonna dry out because of the porous soil, right? So every time I water it, it's just gonna go straight through. So we do need perhaps a little bit of smaller substrate in here. I've got some in the garage. I'll be back. Oh, you're in here, are you? Did you get stuck? Well, that's what happens, isn't it? How long have you been in there, mate? Poor Peaches. She's been stuck in the garage. I don't know for how long. Anyway, so there we go. Potted it up. I should be able to see some of the roots around the sides here. I'm not sure. I'll probably know better once I water it. But we'll keep an eye on it, and it's probably going to bush out pretty quickly, to be honest. And it might like this a little more because it'll be holding onto more moisture. I don't think this was rooted into the moss pole, which is also part of the reason it was probably going really slow in this ultra chunky mix, because this just wasn't holding on to enough water, or at least I wasn't watering it frequently enough, okay? Maybe that's a better way of explaining what was going on here. I am going to chuck my little Silver Cloud label in here, or I will forget almost immediately. And then the last one we have is a similar situation again. So we have, and I use also huge bits of tan bark. We have a really nice healthy root system by the looks of it, with little bits and pieces of rot in here. But again, it just looks kind of fine to me. So do I pot this up separately? Do I just undo what I did and pot these guys up together? Do I really want separate pots of Silver Cloud going everywhere? In my collection, I don't, so I think I'm just going to grab a bigger pot and put these guys together. Otherwise, I'm going to have 3 of these bloody things, as well as all the propagations. Yeah, I think we're going to do that, guys. Apologies. This is a scattered video, but hopefully you kind of enjoy the problem solving and going through this together. And again, if you have feedback, ideas, tips, leave it in the comments. It's always fun to chat to you guys there. So yeah, I'm going to go get another pot. Bigger one. We're going to need a bigger pot. So, new soil. Just going to chuck that in there. And I guess we will unpot this one. Just getting way ahead of myself. And I think what we'll do is just pot these guys up next to one another like so. I'm not going to do too much investigation into the root system here. It looks fine. All right. So put a healthy layer down at the bottom here, not too much. Should be okay. Again, I'm just using, smaller sort of substrate in here. It is mixed in with my chunky solution, but I've just put some extra soil in there to hold on to a bit more of the moisture. Cat's going nuts in the background, having fun, running around like a psycho. Okay, put these guys towards the middle, but on each side I have the roots kind of up against the side of the pot so that I can keep an eye on how they're going. And if they suddenly develop a heap of root rot, you'll be able to see. Okay. Jesus, talk about a mess. Making such a mess. Now, the last thing I'm going to do is, so I quite often do this, I'll kind of sift the soil out a bit, or at least, kind of get all the larger stuff, the large stuff to the top, and then I kind of scrape it back, and I'll take the finest stuff, as you can see, I don't know if you can see this here, as soon as I show you, it's going to fall back on itself. The finest stuff is up here, the chunkiest stuff is down here, and I just take a big fistful of this, and I'm going to chuck it over the top, because as I tap it and as I later water this, all of the small stuff is going to fill up a lot of the holes down below, if that makes sense, right? So if I do this, you should be able to see that the level of the soil, and it'll be coming out the bottom too, is dropping on the pot here, and hopefully filling in a bunch of the gaps around the roots. So you can see it's dropped about 1 centimetre or 2 here. And I'm just going to sort of repeat that process, put a bit of the smaller stuff on top. You will lose it as you water the thing more and more and more, but it is going to be the reason for keeping in a bunch of the moisture. There you go, get this chunky stuff out. All right. So we should be good. Should be good. Look at that. Fugly. Gonna give it a water. And I'm going to fertilize it. Fertilize it. It's the time, 4 o'clock. Gotta get the kids. Okay, get some fertilizer right up you. Get it right up you, right inside you. Enjoy that. Hydrate yourself. Treat yourself. All right. Man, who made this mess? Jesus. Shit everywhere. Lucky my wife doesn't watch my videos. If only she was slightly more into plants, right? I'd probably be in trouble a lot more often. So these cuttings have been sitting out for a while now. I probably don't need to put activated charcoal on them, but I think I might just do it for the sake of it. I think they've probably been out for 20 or 30 minutes, because I have been rabbiting on for quite a while now, more than half an hour. So I'm just tipping out a bit of the activated charcoal onto the mat here and inhaling a bit of it too. And I'm going to just dip the cutting into the activated charcoal here to kind of cauterize, or, sterilize the end of it. I always want to say cauterize. It's not cauterizing, guys. There's no fire involved. All right. Do that with this one. And can I get this side in too? I can. So bang and bang. And oof, this one's going to get its root dirty. Might have to put a spoonful of sugar. Chuck that on the top. Bang, bang, bang. Same thing with this one. Rubbing it around into the part that I kind of excavated out of the side of it. Trying to clear out that rot. Top bit too. The only thing that's sort of annoying is, guys, if you put the charcoal on and then you chuck it in water, don't be surprised if the water goes black, or at least, tint. There's a bit of a black tinge or tint to it, right? Okay. So now I have to decide, we didn't even do any wet sticks, guys. We didn't do any wet sticks. That's kind of boring. Well, I got to decide what we're going to do with these things. I guess we just chuck them into some water. And the really good one with roots, or we can just chuck into the aeroponics system. So I guess I'll go and do that now. I think I'm just going to dunk these into the Philodendron gigas bowl that I have. So I'll show you that. So welcome to my office. So I have this gigas bowl down here. I have no idea what's going on with this leaf. I don't know why it is red. That it looks like it's a cloth that's soaked up blood. Very random, very random. But I might see if I can find some room in there. Otherwise, what else can I do? Okie dokie. Can we fit you guys in together? What's interesting is that I can see here, when I put these guys in, the charcoal actually stays attached to the leaf, or the cutting rather, for the most part. So if you don't move them around too much, they may not lose too much of that charcoal, even if you've only just put it on, which is kind of cool. And can we fit this last beast in? I think we can, although I feel like we're covering up a lot of these other cuttings and they're not going to get too much light. We'll see. It's survival of the fittest, right, guys? Now, what I think I'm going to have to do is pull out the aeroponics system here and take some stuff out and clean it up and everything like that, and then chuck this guy in. So for now, I might just chuck this in a little glass of water for its own good, and I'll put it in there later. All right, looking for a vessel. Looking for a vessel. Can probably just use this cup. This will do nicely. And I think I'm just going to chuck some water in here and let it do its thing. Guys, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Let me know if you like these types of videos where I investigate a plant that I have an issue with. So we may propagate it. Oh man, fuck me, I'm off with the fairies today, guys. I forgot about this one. We're going to chuck this in pond. Bloody hell. All right, water this first. Jesus Christ. You know what? I am going to use nutrient solution. So I've actually chucked some nutrient solution in here. It will grow a heap of algae, but it'll also help this plant just hopefully not miss a beat and just keep going. And it's going to go into the aeroponics system anyway, which has nutrient solution in it. So for now, I might grab one of these little trays and chuck this guy up on my shelves. So I think, where can we chuck this guy that he'll do best? Oh, down here, perfect. I don't know if you guys can see down here. So I use the tray so that this thing hopefully doesn't tip over. And I think I'm just going to settle him like that for now, under the grow light and with a bit of west-facing window when I open it and it isn't sunny. Now, got to get some pon, clean it up, and then we'll chuck this guy in, and then I'll go get the kids from daycare. What else have I got to work out? What vessel I'm chucking the pon in. I don't know why I keep saying porn. Jesus Christ, Pete. Keep it clean. Maybe we use... How big is this? I reckon this one will be good. Alright. Sorry guys, got you crooked there. So I'm going to use something like so. So what I will do first is use this to go get the pond, give it a wash, and then, pot the thing up. Alright, so pond is rinsed. Let's create a little reservoir here. So probably an inch or two should do the trick. Need a bigger spoon. Come on. Alright, so that should be the ticket. Then we will dippity-doodah this guy. Dippity-doodah. It's not dippity-doodah, zippity-doodah. Zippity. Hey, my oh man, what a wonderful day. Plenty of sunshine, plenty of rain. Zippity-doodah, zippity-day. Probably getting that wrong. Okay. So, because I've got roots so close to the top here, I'm trying to sort of sink it all the way down so that they will be beneath the pond. So I guess we'll see how we go. All right. It's going to take bloody forever. It's definitely easier when the pond's dry. Making my jowls shake. Cat's running around like a nut job in the background. Breaking stuff. What are you doing, you nut job? Found one of the kids' toys, huh? Okay, this should speed the process up a little bit. Snug as a bug in a rug. So, fingers crossed, this guy does well. The good thing is there is a growth point right there, an axillary bud. So I have a feeling that within a few weeks, probably 1 or 2 weeks, we will see that activate, start protruding, and then, yeah, she'll be off to the races. I wonder if I can get, sorry for the noise, guys. I wonder if I can get the rest of this in here, because I can't be bothered going back to the garage. All right. Get in, get in, get in. Everyone in. Okay, sweet. Sweet. Ugh, get off my fingers. All right. Sick. Now I just have to fill her up to about here and label it so I don't forget what it is. Finish my lunch. Nice little side of rocks. Okay, nutrient solution. Not easily without spilling pond everywhere. The only downside of this substrate is that it bloody goes everywhere. Right here. And I think this was the Mamei. So I guess I'll write just P Mamei. Or Mamei. Mamei. All right, so guess we're done, guys. Thank you for joining me. I hope you enjoy these videos where we're sort of diagnosing what's wrong with plants and we can, yeah, examine them, find out what the issue is together, and then come up with a solution. Let me know if you want to see more of these in the future. Leave a comment below and say yes or no. Yeah, go check this video out and I'll see you next time. Bye.